Hi, my name's Kayla Slimp. I'm here again with my brother Eric Slimp. We just got finished talking to you guys about the opportunity assessment. So you might be wondering what we do now. So you've got a contract come across your desk, or you want to deep dive into one of those categories we identified. So what do we do from there? And I'm going to let Eric talk about this because I know he gets really passionate about why we benchmark how we do and why that's the best way and really the only way to benchmark. So can you talk about that process?
Yeah, and I think it's important to distinguish the way that we approach our benchmarking is different than a lot of others in the industry. And that's because we have a history of building a capital product, a consumables product, and now purchase services, where we're able to compare at the service unit level. So at the specific SKU level, we're able to compare different services, understand rather than just how much you're spending in aggregate and comparing that to other health systems, we're able to compare how much you're spending for specific procedures or a specific unit of service, an hour of service, whatever it may be. So it's a different conversation that we're having with a lot of our members. And we just believe in general that comparing how much you're spending for your dialysis services to the hospital down the street just isn't enough for benchmarking. We want to arm you with the data so that you're having a different conversation and talking about specific service units.
Right, and really that's one of the strongest pieces of leverage you might have. When you walk in with a benchmark at the most granular level and that your benchmarks look exactly like your contract and you're able to say, this service, you're charging me this, and we know in the industry that the most aggressive rate is this. So it's really a big process that we've found our hospitals. It's able to bring a lot of visibility to an industry that has very little when they're able to consult us and learn what other hospitals are paying. And then even beyond just those normal negotiation situations, we see a lot of times where our benchmarks are the only leverage that a hospital has. So I can think of two examples. One is if you have a regional provider. So remember we worked with a hospital in New Mexico, and she only had one ambulance provider in her city. But we were still able to work with her to help her see what the rates should be per emergency transport, per non-emergency transport. And she was able to achieve $120,000 in annual savings with her same vendor with no option to RFP. And then there's some categories that across the nation, no matter who you are, this is going to be a sole sourcing scenario for you. So one that comes to mind is a specific type of respiratory therapy called inhaled nitric oxide. And that's primarily used for hypoxic neonates. But the company that's Icaria, which was now bought by Mallinckrodt, has an orphan drug designation. So if you want to give that life-saving therapy to in your NICU, you have to work with this vendor. But we're still able to help you save when you work with that vendor because we have an archive of their contracts where we can work with you and say this is their most aggressive rate. And so we've seen hospitals able to achieve even when they have no ability to RFP because of our benchmarks.
And see, I knew she was going to go there. She always has to talk about the babiys. She's been hounding my wife and I because she wants a niece or nephew, so she just had to bring that in. Or both, I suppose. But anyway, so it's important also to understand that because we see so many contracts in the industry, no matter what the structure is of your contract, we're able to tell you what the rate should be. So if your linen contract is priced per pound, we're able to guide you there. If your linen contract is priced per unit with all the various units broken out, we're able to help you there. Understand what the replacement cost should be. All of those different things for different contracts that are structured in different ways, we're able to help you out with those contracts.
Right, and even just beyond being able to compare cross pricing structures, because of that, because we can get down to that common denominator level, we're able to then compare across vendors and understand who a comparable vendor would be in your city, or understand that there may be a market leader that has such a massive market share that their rates define the market. So we're able to work with you, and even if you have a very siloed regional vendor, we're able to help you see what you should be paying based on other vendors in the industry.
Right, and also we're able to draw correlations in certain industries in rates. So we understand what the price drivers are behind the rates. Rather than just reporting on the data, we're able to report why the data shows certain things. So for example, in the medical coding industry, we're seeing the ICD-10 transition having an effect on the rates as the vendors are recovering their training costs and things like that. So after October 1st, 2015, we saw the rates decline about 6 months after, as those vendors have now recovered their training costs. Or services that are closely tied to fuel charges, so freight services, courier services, those types of things, obviously going to fluctuate with changes in freight. Or in fuel costs. And then transcription, another example. As voice recognition software advances, those rates are falling because it's becoming easier for those vendors to provide the service.
All right, so you're really excited about this and you're talking about it as though it's good news. But I just can't help but to think to the next step and realize that that means I have to spend the next few months talking to my stakeholders and doing research to build out an RFP, and that's just going to be an arduous process.
Well, now you're jumping ahead of us because we're going to cover that in our next segment, where we're going to talk about our expert RFP solution and how we're able to automate that process on both the front end and then comparing responses once those come in, scoring them, gaining stakeholder alignment. So we hope you'll join for our next segment where we'll talk about our expert RFP, automated RFP solution. Thank you very much.
Thanks.